Everybody, welcome to the Relatable Radio Hour with me, Dr. Green. Thank you so much again for joining us. I'm really excited about tonight's conversation because we've talked about this on several instances. We've had several people come in and kind of speak on, taking those leaps of faith sometimes, but we haven't necessarily talked about, that other stuff that comes with taking that leap of faith. And what I mean by that is just that fear, the fear that uh, keeps us captive. It keeps us staying in the same place because we don't want to necessarily push the boat. We want to stay comfortable. We want to stay in a place where we're comfortable and, not really challenge ourselves. And that fear can sometimes get the best of us. And so that's something that we're going to talk about tonight. It's just overcoming fear. And I'm so elated to have tonight's guest on the show. We've connected for quite some time, and I'm looking forward to just getting the nuggets from him. And I want to introduce to you all Johnnie Davis, who is a best-selling author and a business development coach. Johnnie Davis, how are you doing, sir?
I'm outstanding, Dr. Green. How are you?
I'm doing great, doing great. So glad to have you on tonight. If you would just kind of share a little bit about yourself and just kind of share, a little bit about yourself with the audience.
Okay, excellent. Well, again, my name is Johnnie Davis, and I'm originally from New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey, to be exact. I'm a Rutgers graduate, so for all of you out there who are alumni of Rutgers University, rah rah. Um, Graduated from Rutgers University in 1994, and then I went into the space of direct sales network marketing not too long after graduating. And I spent a good part of my adult career in that space in which I was able to learn from some of the best and the brightest minds in the space of personal development, sales, business coaching, so on and so forth. And got involved in that space, and I was able to retire from corporate America at age 31 years old. And so life was amazing, and life has been amazing from that point on. I went through a spell where I had a major health challenge after that, in which we'll kind of dive into as we talk more about the overcoming fear aspect. And been pretty successful in helping people develop and create multiple six-figure incomes for themselves in this space. I went on into coaching, business development coaching, helping other entrepreneurs in this space to really get to the next level where they can become peak performers in their space, giving them the tools and the tips that they need to kind of create that success that they've been looking for. Like they had just about all the digits in the lock to unlock, but I was able to give them that last digit or those two digits that they needed to really have that success that they were looking for. So that's pretty much been my track record in this space for almost 30 years, believe it or not. I know I don't look it, but I've been in the space for almost 30 years now. And as you mentioned at the top of the call, I'm also a best-selling author as well. My book is called I'm Still Here, From Heart Failure to Heart of a Champion. And we can talk more about what that entails and why this topic of fear is so important for people to overcome.
Thank you so much for, even thinking of talking about this particular topic. And, life happens and we learn lessons from the things that happen to us. And for you to share that on the scope in which you did, I really appreciate. And it's just always great to meet, fellow coaches in this world because we're all, trying to make people better, help them to accomplish things that they want to. But it's just so interesting and always cool to hear other entities of coaching, the business side of it, helping people financially, helping people to grow within themselves and earn the type of income that they want. I think that's amazing. So it's always great to hear that. So I know right off the bat that you have a very interesting story to kind of share with us, and I'm sure we'll dive into all of it. But you mentioned the college world, going into that space. I know being from Jersey and just kind of having so many life learned experiences. Talk a little bit about you at that very young age of college, what you wanted to do for yourself and, how that progressed for you.
Well, college was, I often say my college experience was four of the best years of my life, undergraduate, four of
Hmm.
the best years of my life. Coming from the inner city, my scope of experiences were very limited. Everybody in my immediate sphere, they all looked like me and really didn't have a chance to kind of like broaden my horizons until I really went to college and I got a chance to meet so many different people from so many different backgrounds. And I also got a chance to see that that looked like me didn't necessarily suffer the way that we suffered. And when I say suffered, I'm talking about just growing up in an impoverished community. We didn't know growing up that we were poor because everybody else around us was living under the same conditions. I thought everybody in the projects, I thought everybody had a broken home. I thought everybody grew up in a single family household and, just kind of making it. But when I got to college and I got a chance to see people that looked like you and me, they actually lived in beautiful homes. They came from two-parent households. They were doing very well. Their parents were educated. They owned cars. They weren't struggling. And it was like, oh my gosh. And then you get a chance to meet other people from other ethnic groups. And you're like, your mind is just broadened. Your horizons are just broadened. And so for me, it was a culture shock, but it was a good culture shock because it was something that I had never experienced before like that. So I got a chance to experience that. I got a chance to connect with some people that really, when I say people, I'm talking about faculty in particular now, that really took interest in my well-being and my education and my future and poured into me and really put me in the right direction and put me on the right track so that I can achieve the success that I was looking for. And it gave me the support and the resources that I needed to help me do that as well. Because again, this was a whole nother area for me. I went to the college, to the business school. And at that time, there weren't a lot of African American students in the business school, at Rutgers Business School back in the day. So we're talking about 1990, 1991, 92. When I actually went into the business school, my roommate and I, we were like two of, I would say, the entire student body was around 5,000. We probably had African American population of about 100, if that, 100 students.
Wow.
My roommate and I were like two of only two black males that were in the entire School of Business. And so we took all of our classes together from freshman year to senior year. We supported one another. We both pledged different fraternities. I'm an Omega, he's a Kappa, and I always forgive him for that. But but we maintained our relationship and our friendship, and we supported one another because we were all we had. And that's how we looked at it at that time. So things were a little different, but the education that we received was phenomenal. And it really prepared us for our corporate careers once we graduated college. But yeah, for me, it was for the best years of my life. I developed lifelong friendships with folks that I still communicate with to this very day, friends that I've been friends with, and fraternity brothers of mine that I've been friends with since 1990.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, it was a beautiful experience for me.
You mentioned that it was like a culture shock coming from where you came from and just seeing the things that you saw and being immersed around people who had different backgrounds such as you. The two things kind of popped in my head. The first thing was that kind of the idea that you had behind going to that particular university? And also, when you did get immersed into that culture, um, was it a difficult transition being, in that particular place as opposed to where you had been?
You know, at first, it really wasn't that difficult of a transition because I had an opportunity to go through the summer program.
Okay.
So while everyone was home or vacation, they were just hanging out doing what they were doing. I went through a summer program myself and my classmates. We went through that program. So it helped us kind of get acclimated to college life, and it helped us understand how to navigate and how to move through that whole college experience. And we had mentors that mentored us, the upperclassmen that mentored us to help us with our acclimation process, if you will. So it wasn't really difficult of a transition. It was fun. It was something that was new. It was different,
Mm-hmm.
and I really embraced the challenge of just adapting and adjusting and meeting other people. It was just a fun experience for me. And the reason why I really wanted to go to that school is because I wanted something different. You know,
Mm-hmm.
growing up in the inner city, I don't know if that's your background, or if you've talked to other people that grew up in the inner city, your scope, your surroundings, and what you are exposed to is very limited.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very limited. And I wanted something different. I wanted something more. I wanted to have more, be more, do more. And I knew that getting outside of my comfort zone, right? Getting outside and doing something different and experiencing something different will ultimately serve me better years down the road.
Mm-hmm. It's great
That was,
that you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
that was one of the catalysts. That was one of the reasons why I really wanted to go to that school. And I had a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, who grew up in the same neighborhood as me. He was a year ahead of me, and he was really instrumental in helping me make my decision with Rutgers in the first place. He said, "Man, we're having fun. There's so much going on down here. You need to come and visit. You can even stay in our dorm and just kind of feel the vibe of what's going on." I'm like, "Okay, sounds great." So this is 1989 now, right? So I didn't go until 1990. I go there in '89, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing. You guys are doing it like this?"
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I can get back and start to fill out the paperwork and get with my guidance counselor and help me with this transition, filling out everything I need to fill out so I can go to this school, this is where I'm coming. And so,
It's, yeah. It's really cool that you knew that, this would be something that would broaden your scope and it would just kind of challenge you in a way to see something different, it's not uncommon for people to like kind of stay in that place of comfort and continue to live and do what they have always known to do. But it sounds like for you, you kind of had a different aesthetic to that, just altogether differently. Um, and I can imagine, just being one of the 100 Black students in the business program. That was kind of an eye-opening experience, just in that I'm sure you probably were immersed with other, Black students probably in your previous schools. Um, how was that transition to kind of be in that space, to be, amongst one of the few individuals in your program? And I know that you mentioned that your roommate also was a business major as well, but how was that experience just kind of being in that place?
well, I'll tell you, it was tough. It was tough, and it was very challenging because sometimes we got the feeling that we weren't well received. Um, we got the feeling that we shouldn't be there,
Mm,
or we were only there to fulfill a quota or something.
mm,
We couldn't compete academically because we were just smart or brilliant, just like the other kids, but we had to be here because some other reason, right? So sometimes we felt that way, especially when it came to work on like different projects that we had to work together in a group project type of setting. We felt like that. We've also, and this is the early '90s, we actually had some experiences where we've experienced racism on the campus. Now, coming from the inner city, that was something that we never dealt with because, again, everybody in our group looked like me, and all my friends looked like me, and we were sheltered from that, so to speak. But when we went into this new world of all of these different people, now we got a chance to see like what's going on in the real world. And so us being two of the only 100 African American students and students of color in this school, we experienced some of that, and I'll tell you how. One day we're walking up to our school, up to the building where we took most of our classes. And there was a white wall that kind of like all the students kind of sat on, just kind of hanging out. And I can remember someone wrote in on the wall with spray paint.
Oh my gosh.
That was the first time we had seen that. That was the first time we had experienced anything like that. And it was a big mess. It was a big to do on campus back then. And, but it was just, that was shocking because we never, ever, coming from our neighborhood, we never experienced anything like that. We never saw that until we got into this environment. So it was pretty challenging.
Mm.
But thank God, we formed relationships with, well, we were always tight, but then we formed other relationships with the other students in the area. We kind of had those support groups. And that's why these support groups and things like that are necessary and needed, because sometimes when you're moving in these different spaces, if you don't have it, it can be that much more challenging for you to get ahead, to move forward. And for you to develop the confidence and the belief in yourself that you deserve to be there and that you can compete and that you can achieve success without any barriers, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Barriers, you can just plow right through them because you have your big brothers and your big sisters and you have that support team and that support group around you.
Mm-hmm.
So don't worry about it. Don't be afraid. We're here. You need to lean back and you need us to push you forward. We'll be here to do exactly just that.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it's just so amazing that, well, first off, that's a terrible thing to have had to encounter, especially, never seeing anything like that being said about people. And, when anybody uses the N word, I mean, of course, that's just that's terrible to even witness or be around that. But it's interesting when you said, forming the support groups and, rallying between other groups within, the Black students. It made me think of another guest that I had on a few weeks ago, and she just kind of shared something similar, where they had to rally together and encourage each other and to motivate each other and just to stay in the thick of it. And I myself experienced the same thing whenever we're generally seen as kind of like the minority or the people who have been underestimated to withstand a program or anything like that. We always find a way to get together and support each other so that we don't feel isolated and that we can continue that journey. So I know you're probably missing out on a lot of different experiences that kind of propelled you in that college realm. But overall, I mean, when you left the university, what types of qualities or strongholds or life learned lessons would you say you had equipped on your belt so that whatever that next step would be for you, you were going to be prepared for? What do you think it prepared you for?
I think going through that experience, it taught me the reality of what it's really like in the business world. My objective was to go into corporate America. That's why we went to. And I recall having this teacher, this professor, and it was one of my sales courses that I took, and she had this saying of becoming maze smart, and basically what that meant was you have to understand how to navigate throughout the maze in corporate America. Get to know the right people. You had to talk a certain way. You had to look a certain way. You had to show up at different events and things of that nature. And she added some other points that were not necessarily in the book. Strategically, how to align yourself with certain people so that you could move through the maze and get ahead. Not necessarily doing anything unethical or something that's going to compromise your morals or anything like that, but just understand that this is the world, this is the real world, and this is how it works. Regardless of what I'm teaching you in the books, this is just theory, but this is how the real world really works. And I appreciate it. I appreciated that because, you know, she was a Caucasian woman, blonde hair, blue eye, giving us the real game in terms of how to navigate throughout corporate America and what's required and what needs to happen and how you need to carry yourself. And so taking that information and just really understanding how to really make that work for me while I was in that space for a very short time, because I wasn't in corporate America that long. But while I was there, I was able to utilize all of that information that she gave us and gave me in particular on how to move throughout the maze, how to make connections and how to be smart. And one of the other things she also taught me and taught the class as well is how not to take things personal, how not to be so involved or so immersed in your emotions. Look at things for what they are. Don't look at them for any more than they really are, but look at them for what they are, process it, and compartmentalize. And that's something that many of us struggle with, because sometimes we can be so engulfed in our emotions when we feel like we've been wronged or disrespected or spoken to in a manner or that we don't desire, or we felt like someone's being condescending. Automatically we become offended. And she warned us, said, these are some of the things that definitely will happen. These little microaggressions will happen, right? But you have to develop that rhino skin, that thick skin, and not react, but respond. And analyze the situation before you speak. Process it, think about it, and remember, you're moving throughout the maze. So these are the things that you're going to have to endure. That prepared me tremendously, because that's exactly what I experienced when I went into the corporate space. But I was unaffected by it because she mentally prepared us. She mentally prepared me for the real world. And that's why I truly, truly appreciate people being honest up front. Don't sugarcoat anything. Tell me what I'm dealing with. Tell me what it's really going to be. Because here's another thing, Dr. Green, that served me very well. Growing up in the projects and growing up in the inner city, it gave me a toughness, a mental toughness that served me very well in any environment that I'm in. There's nothing that a person can do physically or emotionally to me to throw me off my game. Right? Psychologically, you can say whatever, you can spew whatever hatred, you can do whatever. I've seen it all and I've heard it all. Been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. As long as you don't put your hands on me,
right,
we're good.
Right.
But you can say, you can do whatever. You can try to control a scenario, a situation, control the conditions to try to prevent me from doing whatever. But I'll figure out a way to go around it, go over it, go under it, or just go through it. Or if necessary, I'll just disconnect from it altogether and go somewhere else, because I'm not going to subject myself to unnecessary stress, disrespect, so on and so forth, just to appease you or make you feel comfortable, in your space. So I know that's a long-winded message, a long-winded answer to your question, but all of that kind of prepared me for what I embarked on in my short corporate career. And it prepared me for what I did next in the space of direct sales, network marketing, and business development coaching, and so on and so forth.
Well, it really sounds like, coupled with your already life learned experiences, growing up just in general, growing that tough skin and, just being able to handle so much, sounds like what that professor kind of put you on game with, it had you locked and loaded to really kind of conquer whatever was going to come your way. I mean, for her to tell you so straight up, just to not take things so personally and take the emotions out of things and just to look at things for what they are, business moves, and then telling you the types of things to expect, coupled with your already learned experiences, sound like you were really well prepared for, whatever was going to come your way next in that time frame. And so you kind of spoke about it a little bit, but yeah, talk to us a little bit about what that next move was for you and how that went. I know that you said it was short-lived, but how was that experience? How did it come to be? And how was it for you in that time?
Well, while I was involved in corporate America, my first real job, I always say, was working for one of the top health insurance companies uh, in the country during that time. And I was in that space for about, I would say, from 1990 to roughly, 94 to roughly about 2000, right? 2000, 2001. And during that time period, well, let me go back to 1996. Let me go back to 1996 because this was the beginning of me making my transition out of the corporate space. And so I remember sitting in my cubicle one day and I was listening to a conversation that I overheard two people behind me in the next cubicles. They were talking. These people were old enough to be my parents at the time. And they were just whining and complaining and moaning about the job and how they were sick of this and sick of that, just complaining, blah, blah, blah. And I just remember sitting in my cubicle. I'm 24 years old and I'm going like this because I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish they would shut up. And then I'm thinking to myself, if I have to spend the next 40 years of my life listening to this, if that's what my future looks like, someone should just shoot me right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the beginning of me getting into entrepreneurship. A friend of mine told me about the network marketing direct sales space. I didn't know anything about it. Told me about this company where, you can actually build a team and create generational wealth and time freedom and so on and so forth. I mean, these were all buzzwords and all key things that as a young 24-year-old man, I was locked in. I was like, you're speaking my language. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
teach me business school. They taught me how to go get a job. They didn't teach me how to become an entrepreneur and create wealth.
Mm-hmm.
It was a different knowledge, different information that was shared with me. My ears perked up and I went, took a look at it, got started in the industry. That was 1996. By 2003, I was able to retire from corporate America altogether at 31 years old.
Mm.
And so from that point on, that knowledge and that training that I got from a couple of different companies that I was a part of during that time, that prepared me and gave me the information that I needed in order for me to create wealth. And I became focused on not just getting a job,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not adding more degrees because there are people out here that have more degrees than the thermometer, but they're still broke.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily have anything to do. Your education may not necessarily have to do with how wealthy you become. It has everything to do with, are you participating in the right system that can generate wealth? And if you're not in the system that generates wealth, then you're gonna miss out. But again, it all depends on what your goals are. My goal was to create wealth. I wanted to become wealthy. I wanted to walk away and develop the income, have my time freedom, go anywhere, do anything with whoever I want to do it with for as long as I want to do it, and never have to worry about money. And those are the people that were pouring into me, and that's the philosophy that I bought into because that was not the philosophy that was taught in school. So once I learned this new philosophy and I bought into that philosophy hook, line, and sinker, that's what I wanted to do. And that put me on the trajectory to now operate and move in a completely different arena, meet different people, see different parts of the country, and eventually see different parts of the world. And you meet other folks that have the same philosophy as you. And you're like, okay, this brought me back to my first experience when I walked on the Rutgers campus in 1990. I'm like, oh, wow,
Mm-hmm.
this is a completely new world. And then when you go into this space, it's like, whoa, it's a completely new world. And there's a ton of people out here that are living life on their own terms, making an impact, making a difference, changing the world. And that's what I wanted to be. That's what I wanted to do. And that's what I felt like I was the most alive. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was in my purpose. I was walking in alignment with who I was designed to be in the first place, what I was born to do and born to become in the first place. And that's when everything just kind of clicked. Just being in this space and the connections, the people that I continue to meet during the journey, being involved in this space, it made all the difference in the world for me in shaping my mindset, shaping my new belief system, and putting me in a place where when I needed it the most, when I needed to utilize all of that coaching and mentoring and training and everything, when I was presented with my darkest moment in my life and darkest moments in my life, that is when it's really all the information that you've accumulated at that point. Now is the time to really test it to see if it works.
Mm.
I'm thankful that I went through that experience early on in my life, because little did I know that I would be confronted with two of the most challenging, significant emotional events that transpired throughout my short life that totally derailed me. It shook me to my core, but I had to remember exactly. I had to revert back to my training. I had to rely 100% on the Lord, and I had to connect with some people that really, really understood and had the my permission, if you will, to give me that swift kick when I needed it the most, because I was going through that dark period. And we'll talk more about that, kind of give you the framework of exactly what I'm talking about when I say the dark moments.
Well, it sounds like in 1996, a lot transformed for you. You had the epiphany moment that, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. And you started kind of making that preparation to get to a different place later on, a few years later at that point, which is pretty amazing. I was going to ask you at that time, was there any fear to kind of go into this new space? Because you heard so many people speaking about the things that you wanted to do and wanting to, create your own life for yourself. Because I know that taking a leap like that can be a bit fearful. So I was just kind of curious if that was, in your mind at that time, if you could kind of think back.
Yeah, well, I think the fear of staying where I was more than the fear of the unknown.
Yes.
So for me, it was like either I stay here and wound up like these folks, or I go over here and embark on something new and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Feel the fear,
Mm-hmm.
but anyway,
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the things I was learning back then.
Mm-hmm.
Feel and do it anyway. Fear is just one of those things that it'll never go away.
Mm-hmm.
It's always going to rear its head some way, shape, or form, because fear's number one job is to keep you safe. Fear's number one job is to keep you from going into the place of uncertainty. That's it. But it can be crippling. It could be stifling. It just resides in your own head. When you think about the things that people are confronted with, that's new and different. Sometimes I tell people, listen, when you're looking to leave your front door, there's nobody there that's 6'8", 350 pounds, standing in front of your door with a big fear sign that says, "No, you can't do it." No, that person does not exist. That negative emotion is all in your own head.
Mm-hmm.
Wrestle with that. It's an illusion.
Yeah.
It's all an illusion. And so once you realize that it's nothing more than an illusion, then you become, you move towards the greatness that you seek, because that's where everything exciting and plentiful and beautiful and wonderful, it all resides in the unknown. It resides in uncertainty. It resides in uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're afraid to move there, then you're afraid to live.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, so if you're afraid to move in that direction, then my question to anyone is, plans that you make reside in the uncertain world, right? But if you're afraid to move in that space, then why should God allow you to live any longer? Like, you've already made a decision to stop. You've already made a decision to die right there. You're dead. You're physically alive, but you're spiritually, emotionally, psychologically dead. You're like stopped in your tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what life is all about, just moving every day into the unknown. We never know what's going to happen from day to day. No one knows. No one has a crystal ball. So your whole life is uncertain. Every day is uncertain. So you can't have that level of fear moving day to day. Now,
Mm-hmm.
when you talk about things that you want to accomplish, new levels that you want to reach, fear, right, is going to prevent you from moving there. But here's the thing: you wouldn't have the fear if you had the confidence and the belief that whatever you're looking at in the future, that you can actually accomplish it. So fear really, really gains a lot of strength when you lack belief in yourself, when you
Mm-hmm.
lack confidence in yourself
Mm-hmm.
to move forward, to do whatever it is that you want to do. So
Mm-hmm.
when you kind of break it down like that and you ask yourself, what is the alternative? If this is what you truly desire to have, but this is where you are right now, what's the alternative if you don't move forward? And can you live with the alternative? And if you can live with the alternative, then stop complaining.
Mm-hmm.
Stop saying that you want this if you're not willing to at least give it a shot, or give it a try.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people, they can motivate themselves to do it. Some folks need a coach. Some folks need a mentor. Even the best of the best people that are operating at the highest levels in sports, business, entertainment, they all have mentors. They all have coaches. They have someone that can see the blind spots that they can't see, that can see the pitfalls and things that they still can't see, even though they're peaking, they're at their highest level of productivity. There's still blind spots. We still have those blind spots. So for some folks, they need that extra push, but you at least have to muster up enough self motivation to take the steps to move forward.
So, what's screaming in my head, and I mean, you said it in a bunch of ways, is you can either exist or you can live, right? You can either just be a person just living day to day, or you can start to live. And the way that you start to live is when you push the envelope and you go on the other side of fear and you don't allow for it to conquer you and you don't allow for it to keep you, as I said earlier, just kind of captive and not moving forward on something. And of course, yeah, that confidence plays such a huge part in this. I wanted you to kind of really talk about that because I think people need to hear that. I know the people watching this show need to hear that in particular because a lot of people can complain about, their job or their situation, but they don't ever take the effort to get out of it. And if they're not going to do that, I'm so glad that you said it. If you're not going to do that, then you need to be okay with just staying in that place. You don't need to complain about
Yeah.
it because you've made up in your mind that you're perfectly okay with staying in the same place and not going past that point of living and experiencing new things and seeing what's on the other side of that fear because that fear is there to keep you from not moving forward in something that you ultimately are supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
I know that's a different conversation, but I really appreciate you just kind of sharing how that was for you at that time. And it sounded like at that time, you were willing to risk it. You were like, listen, I don't want to be like that. So I'm going to move forward to this. And now we see that that really paid off for you. But you've mentioned some things that I want to definitely dive into. You definitely saw some challenges,
Mhm.
once you did leave that place. I want you to speak specifically on that time, the challenges, the situations that you faced, and just kind of walk us through how that was for you at that time.
Yeah. So when I was at the peak of my career in my direct sales network marketing career, life was fantastic. I'm 33 years old, retired. I'm flying around the country doing my thing, traveling, just having a great time. And I'm a bachelor. And I've decided to move from New Jersey and to relocate to Charlotte, North Carolina, where I live right now. I bought a beautiful home for myself, my bachelor pad. I'm chilling. I'm having the best time of my life. This was March of 2005. And the November of 2005, I'm at a executive retreat with my business partners. We're having a great time. I'm there. And while we're there playing football on the beach, and I'm feeling really tired. I'm feeling just exhausted, and I had no idea what was going on. I'm thinking, well, maybe I'm getting a little older, just slowing down or what have you. No, because I was an athlete my entire life. I played football and basketball growing up, and so for me, that was just out of the ordinary. So fast forward, I leave that retreat, and I come back home, and I'm feeling even worse. And I can literally feel the life leaving out of my body. Like I'm really struggling. I'm lethargic. I had zero desire to do anything. And I really feel like something is wrong. But here's the thing. I was so afraid to go to the doctor because I knew that something was wrong. Now, it sounds twisted, but this is how fear can almost kill you, right? If you don't overcome it. I was so afraid to go to the doctor. I just suffered and suffered and suffered and suffered until finally, February 2006, a friend of mine comes to do a wellness check on me because I had basically disappeared December and January. Come to my home, and I'm literally sitting on my couch. My legs and my ankles and everything are swollen. I couldn't even put on my shoes. And they said, I'm going to take you to the hospital right now because you look like death warmed over. So I didn't have the energy to fight. I didn't have the energy to do anything. So I said, okay, take me to the hospital. Went to the hospital, and they checked my pulse. I didn't have a pulse. And they were like, listen, we're going to keep you here overnight because we don't know what's wrong with you. And I was misdiagnosed earlier. I had gone to urgent care before. They had misdiagnosed me as having a peptic ulcer. So they said to me when I got to the hospital, well, whatever your problem is definitely not in your stomach. So they kept me there overnight. They did a battery of tests. Next morning, they come back to me and they tell me, you have congestive heart failure. And I said, what is that? And he says to me, well, your heart, a normal heart squeezes like this, but your heart is doing this. So my heart was functioning at 8% capacity. So he said, really, he said, you have one foot in the grave and the other one on the banana. Had you waited 48 more hours, 24 to 48 more hours to come in here, you would have expired. So I'm in the ICU. I'm 34 years old. I'm not married at the time. I'm at the peak of my career. Never been sick before. There's been no recorded history in my family of anyone having any heart issues or anything like that. No diabetes. I never did any drugs in my life. I don't drink or smoke. I've never used, like I said, any illegal drugs a day in my life. I don't even understand why this has happened. How does a healthy young man all of a sudden find himself in a situation where he has a diseased heart, and you're telling me that I could have died in 48 hours, and then you're also telling me that I qualify for a heart transplant? And I'm like, so you mean to tell me you're going to take the heart out of my chest right now and replace it with somebody else's heart? I said, yes. I'm like, this is a lot for me to process. Just a few months ago, I'm playing football on the beach. Give me a second. Let me process this. So he talked to me about a whole regimen of experimental drugs at that time that people in my situation, that if they actually saw favorable outcomes for those individuals, but it was no guarantee that I would actually be one of those individuals that have a favorable outcome. So I said, well, listen, I would much rather try the prescription drugs as opposed to just saying, hey, cut my chest open and give me someone else's heart, because I would have to be on a waiting list and all that kind of stuff anyway. So I said, let's try the medication first. And I stayed in the hospital in the ICU for 11 days. And that was like the hardest period of my life, because 75% of the people that are diagnosed with heart failure, they don't live beyond 5 years. So they're already telling me that the chances of you seeing 50 years old is slim to none. This is what they're telling me, just being upfront with me. And I appreciated the candor. You probably won't see 50, and you need to make sure that you have your will and all those things in place. And your life is going to be different. Like, you're not going to be able to exercise, you're not going to have the strength to work out, lift weights, do all those different things that you were used to doing. Your life is going to be completely different now. And so they painted this real, just glum picture of what life is going to be like as I recover from heart failure. And from like the first couple of weeks, I would say the first couple of months, really, it was the most devastating period, devastating time. It's the hardest period of my life because I was constantly afraid. Now I'm afraid. Now I'm scared. You're telling me I'm going to die within 5 years, probably. You're telling me like all the plans I had, just scratch them, put them on hold. Like, don't even set yourself up for failure, right? You need to think about what you're going to do right now with the next 5 years and maximize that to the best of your ability. Now, mind you, I had a whole different set of plans. I had big dreams, and now you're telling me I got to just throw all that stuff out the window and this is my reality?
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm afraid and I'm angry more so than anything else because I don't understand why this is happening to me. But I didn't understand that it didn't happen to me, but it happened for me. But I didn't know that at that time. I didn't realize that it happened for me until later on. But at that time, I'm like, what in the world is going on? How do I process this? All my family's still in New Jersey. I'm in North Carolina by myself. Like, what is this? God, what are you trying to do? Right? You got my attention. Can't go anywhere now. Can't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So overcoming that, there was a period, Dr. Green, where I kind of gave up. I was going through so much pain during the recovery. And anyone who's ever gone through heart failure, like severe heart failure, to the point where your heart's only functioning at 8% capacity, you probably understand what I'm saying. But for those of you that don't, you probably can't even fathom it. I'm going to do my very best to articulate exactly what this felt like. So I'm in pain. My liver is swollen. My organs are shutting down. Swollen. My lower extremities, I'm carrying around an extra 50 pounds of fluid in my lower extremities. Okay. And I have no energy. I can't eat anything. I can't keep anything down. So I'm constantly just vomiting and it's just crazy. I'm not sleeping because I'm afraid to go to sleep. Because if I go to sleep, I'm fearful that I won't wake up.
Mm-hmm.
I left the hospital. I didn't have a defibrillator or pacemaker or anything. So I could have just slipped away at any time. I'm thinking about this. And so one day I'm just sitting on my couch. After not being able to go to sleep for 3 days, I started to hallucinate. I'm taking all these meds for my heart. I started to hallucinate. I thought I actually saw 3 demons running around my coffee table, pointing at me, telling me, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die. I'm tripping now. Tripping out. And I just lay prostrate on my living room floor, and this was my prayer. I said, God, take me or heal me because I give up. I'm done. I'm done. Take me now. That was my prayer. And I stayed on that floor overnight, just like that. When I woke up the next morning, I felt like a little bit of a weight lifted off of me. I started to feel better each day after that. And my heart function started to improve. Then I had to remember all my training. I had to remember all the things that we used to teach people about reframing and asking yourself different questions and start looking at not what happened to you, but what are you supposed to extract and what are you supposed to learn from this? How can you take this negative into a positive? And how do you prevent yourself from spiraling down that dark hole? How do you reject what the doctors and everybody is saying to you? You're mindful of what they're saying, but you're not accepting it because you don't want this reality. You want to create a whole new reality for yourself, a different story. You tell yourself a different story. Don't accept this story. Create a new story, even though you don't have the physical energy to do it, but you still do it anyway because the alternative is what? Death. And I'm not ready to die.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to force myself to do it because I have no choice. And sometimes when you're presented in a situation where you have no choice other than to do it, that's when you move. And so I moved, and I kept moving, and I kept moving, and I kept moving. And I did it to my best ability for 6 years. 6 years later, on Christmas Eve of 2012, I went into sudden cardiac arrest and died. My heart stopped for over 16 minutes. So I'm not even supposed to be here with you right now. I'm not even supposed to be alive. 16 minutes, I'm dead. I have a whole near-death experience and talk about that in other settings and what that's like and what I saw, what I felt, and what life is like for me now and how I see life now. And this is why the topic of being fearful and overcoming it is so important, because I've gone through the worst of the worst. You know, people have two major fears: speaking in public and death. Well, I do both. I've done both, right? The highest level. So speaking to hundreds of people, thousands of people, dying, yes, I've done that. Come back. Thank God. So I'm not here because of my own anything. I'm here on God's time only. So for those that don't believe, that's your problem. You have the right to be wrong. I know what my experience is. And I don't want to be offensive, but I'm just convicted, because you can't tell me after being dead for over 16 minutes and everyone is like, well, while I'm in my coma, they're telling my wife he's not going to survive. And if he does, he's going to be a vegetable. The person that you know, he's not going to be that same person. So you're now going to be his caregiver. This is what they're all saying. But here it is. 12 years later, I'm in my 12th year of surviving that. And I'm on the line with you, Dr. Green. How does that happen? Right? So when you talk about how things come together and the different experiences that we all experience and the things that we take and we learn from those experiences, we reframe and ask ourselves different questions. And once we get the answers to those questions, now we move forward and we become unstoppable, because now we can move with a different intelligence. I'm not learning something just for the sake of learning it and regurgitating it to somebody else. I've gone through the experience, and now I can actually show you how to navigate through that same experience and show you that this is an illusion. Show you that this is real on the other side, if you only have the courage to move towards it. And if you don't have the courage, and you can borrow some of mine, or you can borrow some courage of people who did have the courage and who do have the courage, that are operating at the highest level of whatever it is that they're doing on a daily basis. You're only going to be here for a finite amount of time. Why waste time being afraid doing anything? Every senior citizen, every senior person I talk to, I always ask for wisdom. This is the question I always ask. What would you tell your younger self? Now that you lived to see 75, 85, 95 years old, what would you tell your younger self? You know what they always say, Dr. Green? I would tell myself, first thing, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to pursue your dream. Don't be afraid to dream big. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. That's the number one thing they all say. Don't be afraid. So that's your biggest regret. Once you live into your later years, well, for those that have yet to hit those later years, do it now. Like, don't be afraid. Don't wait. God willing, you'll see 75. God willing, you'll see 85. Hey, I'm not even supposed to see 50. But I'm 52. Look at that 52. Feeling fantastic. Every day, full of confidence in life. Every day. And I look for new challenges to embark on. I may not necessarily be the best at it or the greatest at it, but I don't care. I don't care. I don't care how people perceive or looking at me for making a mistake or whatever. Mistakes are part of becoming successful. Failing is part of the success process. When you reframe and you think differently about how you were taught about certain things and how you feel about certain things, you move with a different level of confidence and certainty. So during my darkest moments in my life, that's when all of that stuff came back to me.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's serving me very well right now because I'm able to help so many different people in so many areas. I'm an advocate for heart health. I sit on the board of directors for the Sudden Cardiac Arrest Foundation. I do so much work to help survivors with heart failure, sudden cardiac arrest, so many different things. My book has been read by thousands of people around the world. I get feedback every day from people saying that your book changed my life. Your book transformed the way I think. And now I know that I can move forward, that my heart failure situation is not a death sentence, that I can rebuild. I can live my life. I don't have to walk around in fear anymore because I see what you're doing. And that's what gives me the most joy because I knew that my life is not in vain. God sparing me was not in vain because I've become the salt, some of the salt in the earth to make a difference. And that's all I've ever wanted to do, is make a difference. And now I can do that in a multitude of ways, not just helping people make money, but if I can motivate and inspire and give you the courage to say, I can go on another day. Give up because of something I read or something that you shared, a nugget that you dropped or a conversation that I had with you, then my life, I'm good. I'm good.
I'm so grateful. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm done.
I was just going to say, I'm just so grateful that God can take our trials and tribulations and make it into a testimony for others and ourselves. And that same transformation that he does within us can propel us to knowing our purpose, knowing what we're meant to do, and just to help others that are in similar situations. So I don't want to take for granted the fact that you shared that with us tonight. Thank you so very much for sharing that extremely impactful story that you experienced. So thank you for sharing it, and thank you for doing something with that experience that helps others that are in similar situations and to get them out of those dark places that you experienced.
Yeah.
I got one last question for you. What is one word that affirms who you are?
Perseverance. Perseverance. And the reason why I chose that word was actually one of our 4 cardinal principles. Manhood scholarship, perseverance and uplift. But I'm perseverance personified because of where I've come from. Coming from the inner city in the projects of Newark, New Jersey, growing up in one of the worst projects in Newark. I'm not even supposed to be here statistically, but I persevere coming from that. All of the trappings that trap many of our young men coming out of the inner cities to drugs, violence, gangs, what have you. I was able to circumvent all of that, stayed in school, got good grades, went to college, graduated, had a completely different experience. And as a result of that, different people came into my life that saw potential in me and said, I'll help you because you're trying to help yourself. And persevering through that put me in different levels, different platforms, and introduced me to a whole nother group of folks. Surviving heart failure, surviving sudden cardiac arrest, not just the physical aspect of it, but the psychological and the emotional aspect of it. Pulling yourself out of that, the dark doldrums of despair and depression and just feeling dejected and feeling like you don't have any self-worth anymore, like you can't live your life because these professionals told you that your life is going to be cut short because of this diagnosis and this is what you're dealing with on a daily basis. And based on clinical studies, this is where you're going to fall into. Saying to yourself, I reject that because I know who I belong to. I know whose I am. And so I'm going to choose to go in a different direction. I'm going to choose to believe a different story. I'm going to choose to tell myself a different story. And I'm going to persevere and just see it through and keep going until I can't go anymore. So my whole life has been just going against the grain. Talk to my wife about this all the time. It felt like my entire life I've been going against the grain. You know, I'm going up the hill with grease on it, but I'm still finding a way to climb. So for me, and based on where I am today, perseverance. And I will die persevering.
Love it. Mr. Johnnie Davis, thank you so very much for joining us tonight and just sharing your amazing story and just sharing the nuggets that you've learned that have helped you to overcome fear. I know that it will impact the people who are listening to the show or watching the show. So thank you so very much for sharing all of it. It was very, very well needed. And I know that someone definitely needed to hear it. If individuals wanted to connect with you, if they want to purchase your book, tell us how we can do that.
So you can get my book on Amazon. It's called I'm Still Here, From Heart Failure to Heart of a Champion. And if you want to connect with me on social media, you can follow me on Instagram at Mr. Johnnie Davis, all lowercase letters. And Johnnie is spelled JOHNNIEDAVIS, Mr. Johnnie Davis, all lowercase letters.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. And one last thing before we go, what's something that you're grateful for today?
I am grateful for so many things. You want one or two? Can I give you two?
You can give it two. Yes.
I'm grateful for my wife because without her, I wouldn't even be alive today. I gave you the short version of that story, but the reason why I'm still alive today is because my wife acted as quickly as she could to give me CPR that night. Had she not done her part, regardless of what the 4 firemen did and all the doctors and the EMT crew, if she had not done her part, we're not having this conversation today. So I'm grateful for my wife. I'm grateful for my little man, our son, who's just come into our lives, because he's given me a whole new reason to live and to see life through his eyes, and to now have someone that I can pour all of my knowledge into and everything that I wish I received as a young man growing up from my own father, that I never got a chance to experience and feel, that the little boy in me still today wishes that, man, I wish I had a dad that I could hug and talk to and about different things. I can give that to him now.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to need it. So I just pray that I live long enough to be able to give him everything that he needs. And so I'm grateful for life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful to be here in this moment. I'm grateful to be here with you, having this conversation with you right now. And I'm just grateful, again, just for the second chance at life to really make an impact, to make a difference, so that when I do leave and depart this plane for good, that I'll hear these 2 words from God. Well done.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, man. Well, I got to echo a few things. Just grateful for life, grateful to be amongst the living. You know, it's something that we should never take for granted, because there are so many things, impeding circumstances that you share with us that could happen at any given time. And we just got to be grateful for the moments that we have, that we're alive, we're healthy, and we're just amongst the living. So couldn't agree with you more on that end. Thanks again for sharing your story. For all you all who are listening and watching the show, I would definitely want you to continue to follow me on social media. I'll put my screen up so you all can just see all the different platforms that I'm on, and definitely, continue to watch shows on my YouTube channel. You can subscribe to the page as well so that you can get alerted when the shows are updated. But please feel free to do all of those things, follow all those areas. And thank you again for joining us tonight. And join us again next week. We're going to have another amazing guest, an amazing topic. I want you all to have a great rest of the evening and have a great weekend.